Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and hello if you are new here. Today I'm going to be covering the top 15 books that I'm most excited for in 2021, specifically talking about science fiction. Of course, I'm also excited about a lot of fantasy books coming out, but I feel like those books get way more attention online, so I wanted to focus this list on just science fiction. And of course, if you are someone who normally watches my horror content, don't worry, I'm definitely going to have a most anticipated list for horror and thrillers, but that'll probably be in a few weeks, so hang tight and stay subscribed. All that being said, let's get into the books themselves. Now, keeping in mind that all these dates are subject to change and they are based off of North American release dates, I want to start with January, and the first book I want to mention is Doors of Sleep by Tim Pratt. This is about a man who, whenever he falls asleep, he wakes up in a different multiverse. And of course, some of these are utopian, so then he tries to stay awake however possible. And some of these places are more dystopians, in which case he tries to use sedatives to get himself back to sleep as quickly as possible. I love a sci-fi thriller, especially one that involves multiverses. And this is the same author that wrote one of my favorite space opera series, The Axiom, so I'm very excited to see another series from him. And this one just sounds really good, and yeah, can't wait to get into it. Next we have Persephone Station by Stina, and this is described as The Mandalorian meets Cowboy Bebop. Normally I try to kind of keep my expectations in check when it comes to marketing blurbs, but I love both those TV shows, so I couldn't overlook it. And this is basically set in a backwater planet and follows a group of mercenaries, possibly criminals, that agree to do a job for a bartender. I've heard great early buzz about this one, and I'm very excited to check it out. Also in January, we have Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This is an author I definitely want to read more from. This is a novella that follows a young girl that is adopted by death, and she has the ability to kill people by simply touching them. Now, this book sounds more like fantasy to me, but I double checked before filming this, and yes, it is classified as science fiction, so we'll see. I imagine it's kind of a sci-fi fantasy story that blends the two genres together, but again, I'm always looking for diverse voices, and I've heard great things about this author and really need to actually read her for myself, and this sounds like an excellent place to start. She also has a fox companion, which sounds like a lot of fun. Also in February is Escaping Exodus Symbiosis by Nicky Drayden. This is the follow-up to one of my favorite space operas from a few years ago that was called Escaping Exodus. And so this sequel is involving the same group of people. It's set in a future where humanity has left Earth and survive by living inside of space-faring creatures. Normally these societies are matriarchal, however in this one we are following a man who is trying to lead his people. I'll keep the plot synopsis pretty brief because this is a sequel, but basically there is a lot of political maneuvering and some really unique world building, and I absolutely love it. It's definitely one of my personal most anticipated books of this list. This one is very high up on my TBR. Moving on to March, this is the only book on this list that I currently have a physical arc of, and that is Skyward by Aliya Whiteley, and this is more of a literary science fiction novel that is set at an inn where people gather to tell stories before the beginning of a war. I'm expecting this one to be very slow paced, very lyrical and beautiful, and again, very different, so less of a science fiction thriller, but something else, just a little bit different. But I do enjoy some variety, and I definitely wanted to include a whole mix of genres on this list because science fiction is just such a large umbrella term, and I really do think that there are science fiction books for everyone, and I'm very excited to get into this one for myself. Jumping on to April, we have The House of Styx by Künsken. This is set on Venus where people have to survive by salvaging. Specifically, this book follows a young woman with a secret of her own. This is the start of a new series, but it's a companion series to a book that I started before. That is The Quantum Magician, and so you don't need to have read that series in order to enjoy this one. You can start here, but my understanding it is set 250 years before that other book, so it kind of gives you the backstory to how humanity got to where it was in The Quantum Magician. So excited to see where it all started. Next on the list is The Last Watch by J.S. Dews, and this is set in the far corners of the galaxy where things are possibly beginning to collapse, and the only people who can attempt to save the day are a group of exiled military recruits. This book is described as the Expanse meets the Game of Thrones series, and I gotta say that marketing blurb works pretty well for me. Again, I try to ignore those blurbs, but I love those series, and so I'm very interested to see how this will come together. I would expect this series to be very action-packed, very military focused, which isn't always my thing, but I'm always willing to give it a try and see how it goes. Next, we have Defekt by Nino, which is a science fiction novella that follows a man working in a Swedish furniture store where he has to work a special shift and find defective items in the store, along with the help of 4 other versions of himself from different multiverses. This is technically the follow-up to another sci-fi novella I read recently, and that was Finna, and so it's a really great story that involves horror and science fiction blended together. Again, I love multiverse stories, and this one just promises to be just as much fun as the first. Next, we have The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers. This is the 4th book in her Wayfarers series, which essentially starts out about a group of people that are building highways through the galaxy so that way people can move quickly between planets. And this latest book is a companion novel, so you could technically start here, and it follows a group of people that are visiting a planet that is basically a highway truck stop. I love the premise of her books. They are highly optimistic and just really give a positive view of the future. So if you're also a fan of the Wayfarer series, I definitely recommend getting this one on your wish list. Next, we have another super buzzy release, and that is Hail Mary Project by Andy Weir. This follows a man who wakes up far away from Earth on a ship. He is surrounded by 2 corpses and has no memory of what happened. He slowly begins to piece things together and realizes that he is supposed to save humanity, and so he teams up with some unlikely heroes and attempts to save the day. This book I am so excited for. It definitely has a lot of similarities to the author's debut novel, The Martian, which is one of my all-time favorite science fiction books. So I'm very hopeful for this one. I didn't love Artemis quite as much, but I think he's going a little bit back to his roots, and it definitely sounds like the kind of premise I would enjoy regardless of who the author is. So I'm really hoping that I'll be able to review it for all of you because I'm very, very excited and hopeful that this one could be a favorite as well. Next is We Are Satellites by Sarah Pinsker, and this is set in a near future where there is technology called pilots, which are basically brain implants that help people with school and work. The story specifically follows one family that has to decide whether or not their children and themselves should make use of this technology. The reason they're hesitant to do so, of course, is that it's augmenting their bodies, but however, they are also pressured because in a world where everyone is adopting this new technology, there's a concern that those that don't have these brain implants will be left behind and basically become second-class citizens. So I really enjoy the premise of this one, and I think it's going to bring up a lot of really important ideas and things that honestly we're going to have to address in the next couple decades. So I'm excited to see where this book goes for sure. Moving on to June, we have Where the Sparrow Falls by Neil Sharpson, and this is set in a dystopian future in a country that is the last sanctuary for humanity because the rest of the world has been taken over by a totalitarian artificial intelligence. I don't honestly read a lot of dystopian at this point, but as soon as you mention artificial intelligence, I have to check it out. I think the premise is really unique, and I've heard some really good early buzz about this one, so I'm very hopeful that it will live up to that premise. Next, in July, we have A Psalm for the Well-Built by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi novella by the same author I mentioned earlier, but this one has a different premise. It is set in a future where robots have become sentient and decide to no longer work for humans, so they put their tools down and disappear into the forest. A lot of time has passed and robots have basically become the source of legend. However, a robot appears to a man and asks him the question of what does humanity need from them. And this book sounds very philosophical, so I wouldn't expect a lot of action in it, but I do think that Becky Chambers is really good at exploring these kind of ideas, and so I'm very excited for this one. And of course, again, as soon as you mention an AI story, I am very excited to see how it's all going to play out. And last but definitely not least on this list, we have Leviathan Falls by James S.A. Corey. This is the 9th and final book in the Expanse series. I have read all of the books that I've published so far in this epic space opera series, and the last book is slated to come out in 2021. At the time of recording this, there is not a specific date, so I expect it to be in the later half of the year. there, but I'm incredibly excited. If you didn't know, I'm doing a reread of the series, so I will link some videos in the cards and description box if you want to hear my thoughts. I'm doing basically spoilery book chats for each of the books as I go back through them in preparation for this last book, which I expect to be epic and exciting, and I have high hopes that they will end the series on a really high note. I've been dying for this book to come out and am just ridiculously excited. So all that being said, this book better not get delayed because it might kill me. So that is it for this video. If you're interested in any of the books I mentioned, please let me know down below in the comments. If you look in the description box, I will have all the names and authors as well as links to Goodreads, so you can add to your own TBR, you can request from your library or pre-order them. I really just wanted, again, to highlight a lot of the science fiction that's coming out next year because, in my opinion, it's going to be a really good year. And I know it always happens. As soon as I film these videos, I hear about even more science fiction books that didn't make the list. So if you're wondering why one of your favorites isn't there, it's probably just because I filmed this video before getting to hear the buzz online. I would love to hear from all of you. What is one of your most anticipated releases for 2021? Even if it's not science fiction, let me know which books you are really excited for. And again, consider subscribing to my channel. I do read a lot of science fiction as well as horror, fantasy, and thrillers. Again, I will have another anticipated release video coming out pretty soon for horror and thrillers. So look forward to that. Stay subscribed, hit the notification bell, and just don't forget to share this around online if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.